Let's make homemade mac and cheese. So think mac and cheese, you may think the stuff out of the box. And this recipe has a little more of what I consider an adult flavor, but don't let that discourage you. In a medium saucepan to start, we're going to melt 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm using my Dutch oven. Once your butter is melted, we need a half cup of minced onion. I used yellow onion. We're going to have our pan over medium heat. We're going to saute our onions for 4 to 5 minutes or until they're translucent, and that means they start to look see-through. In the meantime, I'm going to get a pot of water on the stove to get it to boil. I am borrowing this recipe from a cookbook, and I'll leave it linked down below. But we're told to saute our onions in a medium saucepan. We make our cheese sauce in the saucepan, and then we transfer everything to a 9x13 and bake it in that. I like to use as few dishes as possible, so I, from start to finish, make this dish in my Dutch oven. We are told not to brown our onions, so once they're translucent, we need to stir in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Stir that in for about a minute. Don't skip this step. Part of this is cooking out that raw flour flavor that we don't want to taste in our final mac and cheese. Make sure all of the flour is mixed in, you have no white powder left. Be sure to give it that full minute. Then we're going to add 2 3/4 cups of cold milk. Go ahead and give that a stir. Bring this to a simmer and let it thicken slightly. Be sure to stir it every once in a while. You don't want the milk to stick or burn to the bottom. Now you can allow this to thicken as much or as little as you want. If you want a more of a runny cheese sauce, you'll just literally let it thicken slightly. If you want a really stick together mac and cheese, thicken it a little bit more. Once you are satisfied with how thick your milk mixture is, we're going to add in some spices. We're going to add in a half teaspoon of fresh thyme. I'm using dried, so I'm eyeballing it. I probably used about a 1/4 teaspoon. We're going to be adding a pinch of nutmeg. It sounds weird, but trust me on this. And then lastly, we're going to add a pinch of cayenne pepper. Now, this does not make the mac and cheese spicy. It just brings a little bit of warmth. So if you're worried about feeding this to kids and you don't want it to be spicy, you can absolutely leave it out, but I recommend putting it in. A whisk works really good for this step. Mix all those spices into your milk mixture, and then you need to salt and pepper this to taste. So you might need quite a bit of salt because you want the cream sauce to taste good by itself. So you can add in a little bit at a time and taste as you go. Then once your water is boiling, you're going to add 2 heaping cups. The recipe calls for dry elbow macaroni. I don't love elbow macaroni. It's not my favorite noodle for mac and cheese. Today I am using medium shells. So cook your pasta according to what it says on the package, 1 minute less, because we are going to bake this a little bit and you don't want your pasta to be mushy. So this recipe calls for 2 types of cheeses. Calls for cheddar and Gruyere. I'm using plain Swiss. Gruyere is a type of Swiss, I believe. We need 1/4 pound of the Swiss or Gruyere, so that's 4 ounces. And then we need a half pound of cheddar cheese, which is 8 ounces. Now, I love cheddar. I love sharp cheddar, but I would not recommend using extra sharp cheddar. Just in my opinion, I don't love extra sharp cheddar mac and cheese. So sharp is good, or just plain non-sharp cheddar. I wouldn't do mild, but regular cheddar would be good too. But it's all up to your preference. So give that a good mix in. It's okay if the cheese doesn't get melted in at this point. If your cheese sauce is warm, it may, but like I said, we're going to be baking this, and so when we bake the mac and cheese, the cheese will get melted all the way. We want to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. Once your pasta is done, minus 1 minute, drain it and go ahead and dump it right into your pan. Now, if you need to bake this in a 9x13 casserole dish, you can mix in a large mixing bowl your cooked pasta and your cheese sauce at this point. But as you can see here, I'm doing mine in my Dutch oven, so I just poured my pasta right in. Whichever you're doing in your Dutch oven, or if you need a mixing bowl, go ahead and mix all of your cheese sauce and your pasta together. And this recipe has us putting a crumb topping on top of our mac and cheese before we bake it. I skipped this step, but if you want to do that, you would take 2 tablespoons of butter, melt it, and mix that with 2/3 of a cup of breadcrumbs. You would mix that together and sprinkle it evenly over the top of your mac and cheese before you pop it in the oven. And if you guys are making your mac and cheese in a Dutch oven, you could just put your Dutch oven over medium-low heat and stir your mac and cheese until the cheese is completely melted, and you could just serve it like that. But I am going to pop mine in the oven, partially because my cheese sauce had cooled a little bit, and the recipe says to bake it for 40 to 45 minutes until the top is golden and the mac and cheese is bubbly. I did not bake mine for quite that long tonight, but I did wait until it was a little bubbly around the edges, as you can see here. Your mac and cheese will thicken up a little bit as it cools, but at this point, once you have baked or warmed your mac and cheese through, you are ready to serve it. I personally think that medium shells or even small shells are a great choice because they hold so much cheese sauce goodness. Let me know down in the comments what you think the best noodle for mac and cheese is. I will leave the instructions and the ingredients down below in the description for you guys. If this recipe looks good to you, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, share it with someone you think who would like it also. Be sure to subscribe to Recipes with Ray for more delicious recipes. If you are looking for another tasty recipe, go ahead, click here on screen, and I hope to see you guys there.